fastest way to get to truth between untrusted parties, which has never existed before in the totality of human history. It's a very risky game.
Joshua Goldbard is a general partner at Crypto Lotus, a cryptocurrency hedge fund. If I've already lost you, bear with me. Josh does an incredible job of explaining in simple terms and metaphors the history and how cryptocurrency works. We do take some tangents. Let me know your feedback at Coloring Crypto on Twitter. I look forward to hearing from you. Thanks for joining us, and here's Josh.
So my name is Joshua Goldbard. I am a general partner at Crypto Lotus, a crypto hedge fund, and I've been a casual observer of the space for about the last 6 years and really intensely into it for about the last year.
How did you originally get excited about this?
At a certain point, I realized that the cryptocurrency assets that I had invested in, kind of on a whim, were earning me more money than my salary was at the job that I was working at. And so I started paying attention to it full time.
Can you give us a simple definition of cryptocurrency? What is it?
Cryptocurrency is an asset class that's relatively new. It started in late 2008 with the Nakamoto consensus paper that was written by Satoshi Nakamoto. That laid the foundation for the launch of a currency called Bitcoin. Bitcoin is a distributed public ledger, which means that there's a bunch of accounts and the balances and all of the transactions that those accounts have participated are published on a piece of software we call the blockchain. That means that anybody who participates in this network can see what everybody else on the network is doing. And that is a fundamental change in the way that we think about financial transactions.
I love it. Let's dig in. So what's interesting about that?
I think that why it's so interesting is that there really hasn't been a lot of critical innovation in financial technology. Obviously there are derivatives and more complicated financial instruments, but banking as a class or banking as a idea is not something that we innovate on very often. If you look at the way we do accounting, it's been basically the same since the 1400s when the Medici invented double book accounting. And I think that it's that way because it works, right? And one of the ways in which I think that cryptocurrency is radically different is that instead of having a private ledger that only you and your bank know, like an account at a bank where you have balance, the bank has a balance, and you know what transactions have happened, and the bank knows what transactions have happened, but nobody else does unless they're doing a transaction with you. And so that's existed for a long time. But what cryptocurrency has said is that why don't we just make that whole thing public? And I think that that's a really big difference because you don't have to trust anything. You can just go look at the accounts. And so most people don't really send a lot of international money transfers, so they don't have a really large problem sending money between places. But if you've ever done an international wire transfer, there's this weird period of time where you've sent money from your bank and the receiving bank hasn't confirmed that they've received the money yet. In some cases, this can be as long as 14 days. And so there's this weird period of time where you sent money, but the receiving person may or may not have that money. And so that can go on for an extended period of time, and that gets really uncomfortable. And so I did a manufacturing deal in Shenzhen a couple of years ago, and I sent a payment to the vendor, and the wire transfer took so long that by the time the wire transfer cleared, the price of all the components had changed, and I had to send another wire transfer.
Right.
That doesn't happen. That doesn't happen with cryptocurrency because I send the money, and then we both know that that person on the receiving end has the money. And so if they're going to cheat me, it just starts then. There's no waiting. And so I think about it as like the fastest way to get to truth between untrusted parties.
Let me ask two really quick questions just to clarify. One is, you said the Medicis in the 1400s, was it double booking? Maybe explain that a little more.
So double book accounting is basically having two different books of transactions for the same account so that you and another person can compare your records. So a double book accounting is you're keeping track of your bank account, and also your bank is keeping track of your bank account, and you make sure that the numbers match.
Okay.
That's double book accounting. It's relatively straightforward.
As I try to explain cryptocurrency to friends that don't know what it is, and I say like, yeah, it's this public record of transactions, and yet it's also private and secured. I find myself,
the way that this works is that there's a public part, which is the ledger, and there's a private part, which is the wallet. So the public ledger is the record of all the transactions between all the wallets. But what's private is the ownership of any given wallet. So I can see all the transactions that have ever happened, but I can't take money out of your wallet.
And what identifies my wallet as mine? Like if I give, you
have the keys.
Like,
yeah.
How does that work?
It's just a long number, basically. So it's a long number or a long string of characters, and that unlocks the wallet. So the wallet is broken up into two keys. There's a public key and a private key. The public key says, this is the address that I give to everybody, like basically the street address for your house. And then there's the private key, which is the key that actually opens your house. You have an address and you have a key to your house. Those are both called, that's a public and a private key. The public key is the address of your house. The private key is the actual key that opens the lock to your door.
Okay, and then so you got Bitcoin, which was the first kind of thing that like made the huge shift, and then you have all these new currencies. Like, what are these about? Are they better algorithms?
Some of them, it's really hard to tell. A lot of the currencies are just sort of like kind of a money grab that people are doing right now in order to just get some money in cryptocurrency. And I think that most of these new currencies are going to fail, and a few of them will survive and do really well. But I think in general, like, a lot of the things that we're seeing in cryptocurrency right now are things that I don't understand, and I personally don't like to invest in things that I don't understand. I do think that there are some really cool things that people are doing, but it's really hard to tell the difference between something that is really technically sound and amazing and has a great team behind it, and something that is just another sort of fake cryptocurrency. And so I think right now,
are you referring to like the ICOs, like the initial coin offerings?
Yeah. So an ICO is an initial crypto offering. It's basically the launch of a new cryptocurrency.
Okay.
And so anybody can launch a new cryptocurrency. It doesn't mean it's good just because you put up a website.
Is it just Bitcoin, or are there other coins that you are, cryptocurrencies that you are investing in or feel confident in?
Yeah, so I don't want to make any specific recommendations about investments because I'm bound by the SEC as a fund manager. But what I can say is that I've found a number of currencies to be particularly interesting. So I think that obviously Bitcoin is interesting because it's the first thing that existed in the cryptocurrency markets, and it has a paper that was written by Satoshi Nakamoto that describes a really beautiful protocol. And that happened in late 2008. So that's just been around for a while, and it's really, really thoughtful. Then there are things like Ethereum, which are trying to solve a different sort of problem than Bitcoin, whereas Bitcoin is basically just trying to do money transfers between point A and point B. Ethereum is trying to do contracts, and that's a much harder business or a much harder problem to solve. And it remains to be seen whether they'll be successful or not. There are lots of other currencies that do lots of other things, but those seem to be the ones that have the most interest right now. I think that there are lots of other currencies that have the potential to be successful, but those are the two that I think are the most well-known and the ones that have arguably the most potential now. But again, this is not investment advice. I'm not telling anybody to go out and buy anything.
Is all of this is all about the blockchain, right? The blockchain underlies Ethereum, Bitcoin, this whole thing.
The blockchain is just the ledger.
The blockchain is
just the ledger.
And that can be, but blockchain's a new concept since like 2008.
The blockchain isn't a new concept per se. The idea of having a public ledger is not new.
Okay.
The idea of how to do a public ledger that actually works is new. So the concept of like having a blockchain as, let's publish the account book is something that's been possible for a while now. And we've sort of had vague ideas of how to do this kind of from science fiction. But Satoshi Nakamoto was the first person to solve the problem of how you actually implement one.
How do you distinguish like cryptocurrency and the blockchain? Like I'm imagining like blockchain is like the overarching umbrella and cryptocurrency is an implementation.
The blockchain is a technology and cryptocurrency is a market sector. It's an asset class.
What do you think is like, what are some great applications for the world or society for the blockchain, and how does cryptocurrency relate to that?
Just being able to have a record of the movement of money and the movement of transactions is really transformative. If you think about the way that we do business with people we don't trust, money transfer is very hard. And if we can make that a little bit easier, then I think that there's a lot of things that will change. You'd be able to do commerce with people you don't trust in a way that you really can't right now. Like I can't walk into a lot of places in the world and swipe my credit card and have them trust the Visa network is going to deliver that payment. Like there are just whole parts of the world and whole markets that are inaccessible to me. And that's because Visa has the ability to undo a payment. And on the blockchain, you can't undo a payment. And so there's a lot of trust there that doesn't exist in other networks.
What happens if somebody, human beings, as being humans, make mistake? If is there a way to undo a mistake payment?
So if you type an address wrong on sending Bitcoin, your Bitcoins are gone.
They're gone. Yeah.
I mean, like someone has them, or some wallet somewhere has them, but figuring out who has the keys to that wallet is really hard. There are a lot of wallet numbers. I don't remember the exact number of wallets that are possible, but it's a really, really big number. It's certainly much more than the population of Earth. And so if you type a character wrong, chances are no one has that wallet and it's just gone.
If you were typing in your key and get that wrong,
it's just gone. It's in a wallet that no one controls. So if you type the wrong, it's like imagine if you're sending mail to somebody's address and they live at like 101 Hyde Street. It would be as if you sent the mail to 102 Hyde Street, and because you didn't know who was at that address, that mail is gone.
Give me some metaphors, and I love your metaphor of like the mailing address. But even in that case, like there's a USPS that's centralized, that has the U.S. Postal Service owns that kind of database. But in this case, it's decentralized, right? It's a different thing. Like, what's the metaphor?
Imagine if the USPS is a very unsympathetic robot.
Uh-huh.
If you type your address wrong, it's just gone because the robot doesn't speak human.
To a lot of I think new folks, that sounds like a big risk. What do you think could go wrong with cryptocurrency?
I think over time, people will make tools to make it safer. That's sort of how markets work. In the beginning, there's a lot of opportunity because the market's immature, and a lot of the tools that institutional and traditional investors want in order to protect themselves just don't exist. And so if you watch markets over time, they mature and they get safer. And so I think that's pretty logically what will happen with cryptocurrency as well.
What's to prevent an algorithm that comes along that's just so much better and so much faster besides like what are the barriers to entry for another cryptocurrency?
I mean, if somebody wrote a better algorithm, it might win. I mean, famously, HD DVD was a better format than Blu-ray in lots of ways,
right?
And still lost because the marketing wasn't as good,
right?
So just being technically better doesn't mean you automatically win. There's a lot that goes into the calculation of like which form of currency wins. It's hard for me to say that the U.S. dollar, the U.S. currency, is the optimal way to divide money. Pennies are pretty wasteful, for example, and so the reason that currencies win isn't always because they're technically the best. It has a lot to do with the political dynamics around that currency. I was going to say, yes, you could write a better crypto algorithm, and that might give you an advantage, and it might make it so you have the dominant cryptocurrency, or it might not. It's really hard to tell.
I mean, I heard about Bitcoin like 5 or 6 years ago, and in my sort of
Did you buy any?
Well, yeah, and then I sold it, So,
yeah.
But in my mind, I was like, oh, it's digital currency. My definition of money was if we all agree it's valuable, then it is. And then about in the last 6 months, I was like, oh shit, no, I get it. The public ledger of keeping track of who owes who what, that's the evolution, the technological advance. Like, what was your personal kind of evolution of learning and getting passionate about this concept?
Yeah. I understood Bitcoin right away. I just thought that there would be no way that the government would allow it to exist. I was very certain that it would get shut down. Yeah. I mean, so if you look at eGold, that was a digital currency that came out, I think, in the late 90s. And at a certain point, either the Secret Service or the FBI just went up to them and said, "You're challenging the sanctity of the United States dollar. Goodbye." And so I was pretty sure that was what was going to happen with Bitcoin, so I didn't invest.
Could the U.S. government shut down Bitcoin? Like, they couldn't, right?
So the question is, what are the existential threats to cryptocurrency? And there are really two threats. One is the cryptography breaking. Cryptography is not perfect forever. And so at some point, it's possible that the way that we protect wallets or the way that we transact over cryptocurrencies could get hacked. And so that's always a possibility. But that's a possibility on the Visa network and on a lot of different payment networks. So I'm not particularly too worried about that. The second threat is regulatory. It's possible that not just a single government, but all of the G8 could decide together to ban cryptocurrency. That's a thing that could happen.
What would happen in that case?
Then you'd only be able to use cryptocurrency in countries that are not the G8.
Or and the question of whether massive like VPN protection or Tor browsers and sort of dark Silk Road type exchange of.
You still need to convert it into real currency to pay your taxes.
Okay. Huh. So in one extreme of possibility, all the governments could band together and go, "We're shutting down cryptocurrency," and that would be successful in your hypothetical view.
I mean, it would be effectively successful. It's possible that countries outside the G8 could continue to use it and prosper in some way. But I think that you want to be able to spend your money in the top 8 countries, so the top 8 economic countries.
What do you think are like the potentials of blockchain besides cryptocurrency, like for a not-for-profit or a research institution to kind of like use some kind of like blockchain technology to evolve their research, or is that a opportunity?
I don't actually have a good sense of those use cases. I hear people talking about those things a lot, but they don't really make too much sense to me. I don't actually know that why a nonprofit would necessarily use blockchain.
Yeah, it's interesting.
A lot of the time when people propose cryptocurrency ideas to me, I just ask them why they're not using a database.
Yeah.
And one reasonable answer is just databases aren't going to get me a bunch of financing right now. Like that's one answer.
What do you mean? What do you mean by that? Like funding?
ICOs raise a bunch of money. Yeah. ICOs are raising a bunch of money right now.
Yeah.
And if you just have a database, you can't really do an ICO.
Are there any ICOs that you think are like, okay, this actually might be a really good example of a token that would make sense?
Upcoming or ones that just happened?
Either way, just like more conceptually or examples that prove the concept.
Yeah. So I spent probably about 40 hours of my life evaluating the technical white paper for Tezos. And I really...
How do you spell that?
Tezos. Yeah, so the idea with Tezos is that it's a ledger where the people who own the currency can vote on the future of how the currency works.
Okay.
And that's different than a lot of other currencies where in Ethereum, it's basically whatever Vitalik wants to do. There's some amount of voting, but it's mostly just whatever Vitalik, the founder of Ethereum, wants to do.
This is a whole other thing where I get so confused. You're saying that like the guy with Ethereum has some kind of power over some aspect.
So the future software state of the network, i.e. what software the miners and the master nodes are running, is determined through some course of action. So in the case of Bitcoin, the miners effectively control what the future software of the network is. And in the case of Ethereum, it's basically what Vitalik wants to do with the software. That might change over time, but that's kind of how it works right now. And with Tezos, it's whatever the owners of the currency vote to be the future software that is running the network.
So would you say, I mean, like I've heard people critique ICOs as saying it's antithetical to the whole concept because because it's centralized, and you're saying Ethereum itself with one.
The governance of Ethereum is centralized. The ledger itself is not.
Huh. Okay. Is there any way to explain that? Like in 5.
Yeah. So if you think about it, the Ethereum network is a bunch of computers all over planet Earth that are running what is called the Ethereum master node software. And that software gets updated. That's different from the list of accounts of all the Ethereum transactions. The master nodes are required for the list of accounts to operate, but the editing is only on the software running those nodes, not the actual ledger that they carry. Does that make sense?
Well, so what I'm hearing is, to a degree, there's a fundamental trust that the software is going to have the integrity, or it's not going to change, because if they did get crazy, they could switch that whole thing.
If the software broke to the point where people were stealing transactions, the value of the currency would drop to zero.
Awesome, man. Josh, I really appreciate your time on the podcast.
No problem, man. Take care.
Okay, thanks, Josh.
That was Joshua Goldbard. You can find him at cryptolotus.com or on Medium. Look for Crypto Lotus. Thanks for joining Coloring Crypto. Our guests range from investors to futurists to visionaries to even artists. So join us every Sunday and Wednesday as we shed some light onto the cryptocurrency and blockchain world. You can reach me at Coloring Crypto on Twitter, and you can also call into our listener wallets. Call 925-238-3724 and leave a question for us there.
Subscribe now.